On October 27, 1962, the world didn't step back from the edge. It fell. What if the Cuban Missile Crisis didn't end with diplomacy, but with detonation? What if one misunderstood command rewrote the fate of humanity forever? And what if the world you're living in right now is just the version that got lucky? Can you imagine a world where history ended in a single afternoon? The point of divergence. October 27, 1962. Black Saturday. In our reality, it was the closest humanity ever came to nuclear war and survived. But survival is a fragile thing. It depends on people, and people make mistakes. In this timeline, the mistake is small, almost invisible. A U.S. U-2 reconnaissance aircraft is shot down over Cuba. The pilot is killed instantly. Washington receives the report within minutes. Inside the Pentagon, tension transforms into something sharper, certainty. This is no longer a standoff. This is an attack. Across the Atlantic, Soviet commanders in Cuba are already on edge. Communication lines with Moscow are slow, unreliable. Orders are unclear. Authority is blurred. Then comes the moment that changes everything. A Soviet submarine, deep beneath the Caribbean, is being hunted. U.S. naval forces drop practice depth charges, signals meant to force the submarine to surface. But inside the submarine, cut off from communication, exhausted and overheated, the crew believes war has already begun. They carry a nuclear torpedo. And for the first time in human history, the decision to use nuclear weapons is made not by presidents, but by men in the dark. The launch is authorized. The torpedo rises through the water like a silent verdict. Minutes later, a U.S. destroyer disappears in a blinding flash. The moment everything breaks, Washington doesn't see confusion. It sees confirmation. Radar picks up the detonation. Intelligence reports flood-in, fragmented, incomplete, terrifying. Enemy nuclear strike. There's no time to verify, no time to hesitate, because hesitation, in nuclear warfare, means death. Within minutes, the United States activates its response protocols. Strategic Air Command is ordered into full deployment. Bombers take off across the country, their payloads armed. Intercontinental ballistic missiles are prepared for launch. In underground bunkers, men stare at screens that will decide the fate of civilization. And then, the order is given. The first strike. The United States launches nuclear strikes on Cuba. Missile sites, military bases, command centers. Havana is consumed in fire. But the attack doesn't stop there. Fearing a broader Soviet assault, U.S. command authorizes strikes on Soviet strategic positions beyond Cuba, radar stations, airfields, missile installations. To Washington, this is defense. To Moscow, it looks like annihilation. The Soviet response. Inside the Kremlin, confusion turns into panic, and panic turns into action. Early warning systems detect incoming missiles. There is no clear picture, no certainty, only one assumption. The United States has begun a full nuclear war. And if that assumption is wrong, it doesn't matter. Because if it's right, waiting means extinction. The Soviet Union retaliates. Hundreds of warheads launch within minutes. Targets, Europe, NATO bases, major U.S. cities. The sky fills with objects that cannot be stopped. Can you imagine a world where, in less than an hour, every major power on Earth commits to its own destruction? The point of no return. At this stage, there is no diplomacy, no negotiation, no second chance. The systems designed to prevent hesitation are now ensuring catastrophe. Automated retaliation protocols activate. Alliances trigger chain reactions. NATO responds. Warsaw Pact responds. China, uncertain and threatened, prepares its own nuclear forces. India and Pakistan, caught in rising panic, mobilize. The war spreads beyond superpowers. It becomes global. And then the first missiles arrive. The first impacts. The first missiles arrive without warning. There are no sirens in most cities. No time to react. No time to understand. New York City sees a flash brighter than the sun. And then nothing. In less than a second, millions of lives are erased. Washington, D.C. follows. The political heart of the United States disappears in a firestorm that reaches into the sky like a pillar of judgment. Across the ocean, Moscow is hit. The Kremlin, the symbol of Soviet power, is vaporized before a single command can be issued. London, Berlin, Paris. One by one, the world's greatest cities become shadows burned into the earth. Can you imagine a world where entire civilizations vanish before anyone can even say goodbye? The first 60 minutes. Within the first hour, over 100 nuclear detonations reshape the planet. Shockwaves flatten buildings for miles. Thermal radiation ignites everything flammable: wood, fabric, skin. People miles away from the blast zones suffer third-degree burns instantly. Windows explode inward, turning glass into lethal storms. Electromagnetic pulses ripple across continents, destroying electrical systems, communication networks, and anything dependent on modern technology. The world goes dark, not metaphorically, literally. Satellites fail, power grids collapse, radio signals dissolve into static. Humanity loses its voice. The second wave, but the first strikes are only the beginning. Submarine-launched ballistic missiles rise from the depths of the oceans. Hidden, undetectable, unstoppable. They target what remains: military bases, industrial centers, transportation hubs. Airports are obliterated before planes can even take off. Highways become graveyards of stalled vehicles. Hospitals, overwhelmed and unprepared, collapse under the weight of the injured. Can you imagine a world where survival itself becomes a matter of pure chance? The firestorms. In the hours that follow, a new kind of destruction begins. Firestorms. Entire cities ignite into massive, self-sustaining infernos. The heat becomes so intense that it creates its own wind system, pulling oxygen inward, feeding the flames. People who survive the blast now face something worse. The air itself begins to burn. Temperatures in these firestorms exceed anything humans have ever experienced. Steel bends, concrete cracks. Human bodies simply cannot endure. And above it all, black smoke rises, higher and higher, into the upper atmosphere. The silent killer. Radiation, invisible, odorless, unstoppable. Fallout begins within hours. Fine particles of radioactive ash drift through the sky, carried by winds across continents. It doesn't matter where you are. It will reach you. People who seemed untouched by the explosions begin to feel it. Nausea, dizziness, burning skin. Within days, symptoms worsen. Hair falls out. Organs fail. Immune systems collapse. Hospitals are gone. Doctors are gone. There is no treatment, only time. Can you imagine a world where survival today means suffering tomorrow? Collapse of order. Governments don't fall. They disappear. Leadership structures are decapitated within minutes. Communication networks are gone. Military commands fragment into isolated units, each acting on incomplete information. In some regions, commanders continue launching attacks long after their nations have already been destroyed. Because they don't know. Because they can't know. Law enforcement vanishes. Emergency services vanish. There is no coordination, no rescue, no plan. What remains is chaos, humanity without systems. Survivors emerge slowly, from basements, from subway tunnels, from improvised shelters. They step into a world they no longer recognize. The sky is darker. The air smells like ash. The silence is unnatural. Cities are uninhabitable. Water systems are contaminated. Food supplies are gone or poisoned. Within days, the question is no longer what happened. It becomes, how long can we last? The first week. By the end of the first week, the scale of destruction becomes undeniable. Hundreds of millions are dead. Hundreds of millions more are dying. Global infrastructure, built over centuries, is gone in hours. Trade is impossible. Agriculture is failing. Transportation is non-existent. Even regions untouched by direct strikes begin to feel the effects. Because this is not just a war. This is a planetary event. And it's only just beginning. The sky changes. The smoke from burning cities continues to rise. Billions of tons of soot enter the atmosphere. Sunlight begins to fade. Days grow dimmer. Nights grow colder. Temperatures drop, slowly at first, then rapidly. This is the birth of something humanity has never experienced before. Nuclear winter. Can you imagine a world where the sun stops warming the earth? The end of the first month. Within a month, global temperatures fall drastically. Crops fail across entire continents. Photosynthesis slows, then stops. Food chains collapse. Animals begin to die, not from radiation, but from starvation. And humans follow. The survivors now face a new enemy. Not fire, not radiation, but cold. The long winter. The cold doesn't arrive like a storm. It settles, slowly, permanently. Weeks turn into months. The sky remains dim, choked by layers of soot drifting high above the earth. Sunlight becomes a memory. Average global temperatures drop by several degrees, but in some regions, the fall is catastrophic. Summers feel like winters. Winters become something far worse. Rivers freeze in places that have never seen ice. Growing seasons disappear entirely. Can you imagine a world where the earth itself refuses to grow food? The end of agriculture. Farming becomes impossible. Fields once rich with crops now sit under frost and ash. Seeds fail to sprout. Soil loses its balance. Rain carries radioactive particles into what little life remains. Livestock dies quickly, either from starvation or contamination. Within months, global food reserves are gone. Supermarkets were emptied in days. Emergency supplies, consumed in weeks. Now, survival depends on what you can find or take. The new human condition. Humanity fragments, not into nations, but into small, desperate groups. Families, communities, survivor clusters, each one isolated, each one adapting. Some turn inward, building fragile systems of cooperation, sharing resources, preserving knowledge. Others turn outward, driven by hunger, fear, and the need to survive at any cost. Trust becomes rare. Violence becomes common. Can you imagine a world where morality is a luxury no one can afford? Underground existence. The surface is no longer safe. Radiation levels fluctuate unpredictably. Temperatures remain unstable. Food sources are nearly non-existent, so people go underground. Subway systems become shelters. Old bunkers are reopened. Mines, tunnels, basements. Anything that offers protection becomes home. Entire communities begin to live beneath the earth. Generations grow up without seeing the sky. Light becomes artificial. Air becomes controlled. Water becomes precious. The keepers of knowledge. But not all is lost. In certain locations, military bunkers, research facilities, remote installations, groups of scientists, engineers, and officials survive the initial collapse. They bring something rare into the new world. Knowledge. These enclaves become the seeds of a different future. They salvage technology, preserve data, maintain fragments of the old world systems. Nuclear reactors, once symbols of destruction, are now lifelines, providing energy in a world without sunlight. Can you imagine a world where the same force that nearly ended humanity becomes its only hope? The rise of techno-enclaves. Decades pass. Slowly, carefully, these enclaves grow. They construct sealed habitats, controlled environments where air is filtered, temperature is regulated, and food is grown using artificial systems. Hydroponics, early genetic engineering, closed-loop ecosystems. Inside, life begins to stabilize. Outside, the world remains hostile. These enclaves are not open to everyone. Resources are limited. Every new person is a risk. Every decision is calculated. A divided species. Humanity is no longer unified. It is divided into two realities. Above ground, scattered survivors. Harsh conditions. Constant struggle. Below or within enclaves. Controlled environments. Advanced knowledge. Structured survival. The gap between them grows with each generation. Language shifts. Culture diverges. History becomes fragmented. Children born decades after the war don't understand the world that came before. They hear stories of airplanes, of the internet, of cities filled with light. To them, it sounds like mythology. Can you imagine a world where your past feels like fiction? The changing Earth. Meanwhile, the planet begins to transform. Radiation alters ecosystems. Some species vanish completely. Others adapt. Plants evolve resistance. Insects thrive in conditions humans cannot tolerate. In certain regions, strange new ecological systems emerge. Resilient, unpredictable, and completely foreign to pre-war science. The Earth is healing, but not for us. The futuristic legacy. A century passes. The world is quieter, colder, but stabilizing. Radiation levels begin to decline in certain areas. Skies slowly start to clear, revealing a sun that feels unfamiliar to those who have never seen it directly. For the first time in generations, humanity faces a new question: return or remain hidden. The new civilizations, the enclaves, have evolved. What began as survival shelters are now structured societies, highly organized, highly controlled. Every resource is monitored, every action is optimized. Artificial intelligence, primitive by our standards, revolutionary by theirs, manages systems of air, food, and energy. Human life expectancy stabilizes. Education is focused on preservation, not expansion. The goal is not progress. It is continuity. Can you imagine a world where survival replaces ambition? Multiple paths forward. As the surface becomes marginally safer, exploration begins. Small teams venture out. They discover ruins of the old world, cities frozen in time, covered in dust and decay. They also discover something else: survivors, descendants of those who never entered enclaves. They are different, stronger in some ways, more adapted to the harsh conditions, but also disconnected from advanced knowledge. Two branches of humanity now face each other, not as enemies, but as strangers. The good ending. In one possible future, they choose cooperation. The enclaves share knowledge, medicine, agriculture, engineering. Surface survivors share adaptability, resilience, environmental understanding. Together, they rebuild. Slowly, carefully, a new civilization emerges, not as powerful as the old world, but wiser. Energy is used responsibly. Weapons are restricted. Global communication is re-established. The memory of nuclear war becomes humanity's greatest lesson. Never again is not just a phrase. It is a foundation. The bad ending. In another path, fear wins. The enclave sees surface survivors as threats. Unpredictable, uncontrollable. Access to technology is denied. Borders, both physical and ideological, are enforced. Conflicts begin. Small at first, then larger. Advanced weapons, though limited, are used. Not nuclear, but destructive enough. Humanity repeats its pattern. Division, control, violence. The world doesn't end again, but it never truly recovers. The dystopian ending. And then, there is the darkest outcome. The damage done in 1962 proves too deep. Ecosystems fail to fully recover. Atmospheric changes persist longer than expected. Oceans become unstable. Oxygen levels fluctuate. The enclaves begin to fail, one by one. Systems break down. Resources run out. Knowledge, once preserved, is lost again. Humanity fades, not with a sudden explosion, but with a slow, quiet decline. Until one day, there is no one left to remember. Final reflection. Can you imagine a world where everything you know, every system, every city, every connection, ended because of one moment, one decision, one misunderstanding? The Cuban Missile Crisis is often remembered as the moment humanity came closest to destruction and stepped back. But in another timeline, we didn't, and everything changed. This is how the river of time could have flowed. But what do you think? Would humanity be better off in this timeline? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next ripple of history.